Schulze here, aka the Elvish author, and once again, the fantabulous Isaac.
Hi.
Also known as Zachary. You do not want me to reveal your secret name? It's too late now. Anyway, and we are finally back with doing our weekly reading of Demon Queen, my Legend of Zelda fanfiction, just for funsies. And yeah, we are actually, if you guys want to check this out, we are definitely way over halfway through now.
So close.
And we really only have, like, I think 3 chapters plus the epilogue left. So we are going to be starting on chapter 10 today, guys. Now, I know it's been 2 weeks, but are you able to tell these lovely people what happened 2 weeks ago in chapter 9? Anything? Do you remember anything offhand? If not, I can refresh you.
Oh. Did Sakura have her baby?
Sakura did have her baby.
Yep. What's her name?
Yeah, so Kotake
did a spell of some sort just to think she just wanted to know the sex of the baby.
Yeah,
right?
she claimed that she was just trying to see what the gender of the baby was, but we're wondering if there's some ill intent behind that. Yeah, so that happened at the end of the chapter, is that Sakura had her baby. But before that, there was a lot of action in the Temple of Time.
Yep. He fought against Impa.
Yeah, he fought against Impa. They were trying to get the spiritual stones. But the spiritual stones were gone. They were scattered across the realm, which of course is a lead up to Ocarina of Time, where we know that they're scattered and guarded in different places. So they did not get those. So Ghirahim's plans, they're not going stellar. Yeah, he keeps thinking that he needs these stones so he can get the Triforce, so he can protect himself before he raises all these armies from the underworld, because if he does that, he thinks Demise will notice, and then there goes all his plans. But yeah, I mean, we're on chapter 9, we're almost at the end of the book, and his plans aren't going great, so either something needs to turn around, or this bro isn't going to have his plans work out. One of the two. But yeah, any thoughts?
And he's distracted.
He is distracted. Yeah, he's got this new baby thing to contend with and whatnot.
The woman he loves.
Well, as much as he can love somebody, he obviously at least has some kind of care for her. He at least respects her. I think respect is a good word for how he feels toward her, just because, she doesn't fear him in the same way everybody else does. But she also doesn't lust after him. She has some semblance of self-control that he respects. So I think that he respects who she is as a person and her character. Does he love her? I don't know. That could remain to be seen if he really has love for her. Maybe he has love for her in his own way.
Love could be different for each person.
That's true. Or demon, as the case may be.
Each demon person.
Do you have any thoughts then on what might happen going forward toward the end of the book?
All right, I still think the baby's Ganon.
Okay, that's right. That's been his theory this whole time.
I think his ultimate downfall will be connected to Sakura in some way.
Didn't someone... Oh, Impa. Impa made some kind of prophecy that Sakura's going to die, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. Yeah. Okay, well...
But he also could have just been... She could have just been trying to toy with him, throw him off balance.
She could have been, yeah. So, well, shall we jump into it?
Please.
And see what we can learn. Let's jump into Chapter 10 of Demon Queen. The sight of blood had never before daunted him, especially considering the amount he had seen only hours before, exploded all over the walls and windows of the Hylian temple. Did you need something?
You forgot to tell them to put their ears on.
That's true. Strap on your elf ears so you can hear this story properly. Now, as we were, bloody temple. Well, bloody birth. Anyway. Now, however, the blood spread across the bed as an infinite ocean of death in his eyes. Death, and more death. This was all he could see. This was a solitary thought flashing through his mind as he watched the life drain from Sakura's paling face. Crimson consumed his mind till he saw nothing else, till he snatched at one of the Hylian servants racing madly to and fro, yanked her to him, and demanded, "How is she?" The woman stared up at him, wide-eyed and trembling. She is tired, my lord. She loses much blood. The baby is strong and does not come easily, but the midwife was able to turn him about. He should come any moment now." A loud wail pierced the air, shattering Ghirahim's world of red with a ray of hope as, instead of death, fate countered with a new chant. Life, life, life. You have your heir. The midwife swaddled the crying infant in fresh linens, while one of the Hylian handmaids took a damp cloth and washed away some of the blood from his skin. "My lord," the midwife turned to Ghirahim. I know you wish to see your mistress and her babe, but it would be best if we could have a chance to clean them, make her comfortable so she may properly rest with the new little one. I will bring you in as soon as she is ready." Ghirahim glanced over at Sakura. A proud grin pulled at the corners of her lips and shone from her exhausted gaze, which carefully followed the servants' every move as they set about cleaning the infant. With a nod at the midwife and a muttered thanks, Ghirahim stole from the room. He paced the hall wildly. He thought to attend the archery grounds, the training grounds, anywhere he might be able to expel the energy rushing through him like a multitude of tidal waves. He ran his hands along the walls, pushing some of the magic pulsing right beneath the skin through the stones. Not enough to cause damage, though a few slight tremors did shake the fortress. Only enough to divert his magic, lest he bring the whole fortress crashing down in a single stroke of overwhelmed excitement. He had an heir. He, Ghirahim, Lord of Demons, had an heir. He hadn't even bothered yet to ask if it was a daughter or a son. That yet remained a mystery that set his nerves on even greater edge. He would be proud either way, and yet a son would secure his kingdom, his lineage, his destiny for all eternity. Can we talk about the fact of how arrogant Ghirahim is and how he's also like saying like, oh, his kingdom, his lineage, when, bro, you haven't even taken the throne, you couldn't even take the stones, like, calm yourself here.
Nothing has worked for him.
As soon as he took the throne, he would set up his queen and heir, and everything else would naturally follow. Lord Ghirahim, how is she? Ghirahim's head snapped up. He cleared the space separating him from Komei in a single bound and raised a hand to strike her, but quickly diverted his attention to the wall instead. The stones shivered, and a light rain of dust and chipped pebbles fell. Fear glimmered in Komei's eyes, but as ever, she held her ground. "I hardly know whether to consider you utterly brave or utterly stupid for coming now to confront me," Ghirahim said. "Perhaps that may be decided in your reasons for doing so. Speak. My heir has just been born. I wait to see him and my queen. I have no patience for further of your lies and devilry." "I came first to see how they are," Komei said. Ghirahim scoffed, but the longer he studied Komei, he sensed some sincerity, however slight, within her. Sakura is tired and weak, but pulls through. By the strength of her spirit, I am sure. The child is also strong, they say. Komei nodded. No doubt he inherited his mother's spirit and his father's determination. Ghirahim studied Komei a while longer. Question burned within her gaze, words just waiting on the tip of her tongue, words she feared to allow herself to breathe life within, and yet her lingering gaze spoke of her desperation to do so. "What is it?" Ghirahim glanced at the door that yet remained shut painfully tight, then back to her. "Why did you really come? Speak up. I told you my patience tires, and not least of all for you and the likes of your sister." "My sister meant no harm. She has always been desperate for attention, for affection. She was reckless, yes, but you must understand that a woman's yearning for a child will drive her to do mad things. Her madness nearly cost the life of my queen, and could have easily cost the life of my child and heir. It's no different than your desperation to seek freedom from your master and gain your own kingdom. You would do anything, kill even. My sister has ached for a child for the longest time, and yet the healers have always told her she is barren. She thought that with you, with your magic, it might be possible. I do not justify her behavior, only beg you to understand, and to forgive her. Please, I do beg you to forgive my sister." Ghirahim studied her in surprise, both at the words, the person who spoke them, and the pleading that had gripped her usually calm and collected voice. "Why do you insist on defending such a weak and pathetic creature? She draws no strength from herself. She clings to me for approval, and I must assume she does the same to you. She nearly destroyed the one person who has been a useful aid in our plans. Why then? What is she to you?" "She is my sister." Ghirahim waited for further reply, even though he recognized the finality with which he had uttered the statement. Slowly, he shook his head. "I will never understand your human's ties to blood. Just because the two of you were born from the same womb, it seems to give you mortals such an obligation to protect and stand by one another's side. It is unfathomable to me." "Not so," Komei said. "I think perhaps you begin to understand. With Sakura and her son. You were furious at Kotake's mistake. And why? Because it nearly cost you the lives of people who have come to mean something to you. I do not love her," Ghirahim said sharply. "Be that known. I am incapable of love. I was not created for it." Surprise waved across Komei's face for a moment before she replaced her mask of calm reserve. "I said nothing about love. Only that, in your strong desire to protect Sakura and your heir, you could better understand my own need to protect my sister. It is still different. I am bound to Sakura not by blood, but by spirit. Something in her spirit draws her to me. Different as we are in every way, I feel as though she understands me at my core. Spirit before blood. Spirit is what I truly understand, truly value. Mortals all bleed the same blood, but not all are born of the same spirit. Koei's face pulled into a frown as curiosity danced in her eyes. You sense something in Sakura, a hidden power or destiny. She was able to read the ancient texts. Ghirahim narrowed his gaze, scrutinizing the fire witch. As usual, she was annoyingly indecipherable. I don't know, nor am I certain I would wish to tell you if I did have thoughts on the matter. But go for now. Tend your sister. Tell her whatever lies will ease her suffering. I must tend to my wife and child. I will not lie to my sister, Koei said. Not for comfort or for any other reason. Ghirahim hesitated. He tried to think of some words that might honestly provide Kotake relief or lure her back into his good graces. But he didn't need her back in his good graces. He no longer even desired it. The door opened, and Ghirahim's attention shot in its direction as the midwife stepped out and announced, She is ready, my lord. She is very tired, so I would caution against a long visit. But she has been asking for you and refuses a moment's sleep until she shares in your triumph with you. Without another glance at Koei, Ghirahim hurried down the hall, pushed past the midwife, and braced himself. Like magic, the blood had been washed away. Sakura lay on a fresh linen, cradling a small bundle that wiggled and squirmed and cooed at her breast. A son. Sakura smiled up at Ghirahim and held the babe toward him. His wisp of blonde hair and bright blue eyes perfectly mirrored those of his mother. A son, just as I promised you. Thoughts? Comments?
It's all coming together.
Okay, that's all I have to say. Ghirahim glided over and eased onto the edge of the bed. Sakura carefully transferred the babe into his arms.
Right.
His bright...
Blonde?
I did say blonde, and blue eyes.
Uh-oh.
Also, I just had a thought that Sakura, as we know, is not a Gerudo. So it would be strange to me if the babe had Gerudo features.
Uh-oh.
Do you want me to keep reading? I'm going to keep reading, so, okay.
My theory has changed, but continue.
Ghirahim glided over and eased onto the edge of the bed. Sakura carefully transferred the babe into his arms. His bright blue eyes shone round and wide up at Ghirahim. How strange it felt to hold something so fragile, with no thoughts of crushing it in his hands, but rather with every urge to protect and defend it to the death. Parental instinct, it must be. It wasn't exactly a novel sensation. Even the most emotionless beast possessed it. Perhaps it wasn't all that strange, then, for a demon to possess it, too. He is beautiful like his mother. And strong, Sakura said. I can feel it. He is very strong. Ghirahim admired him a few moments more before glancing up at her. An icy paleness clung to her skin, and dark circles shadowed her eyes. What of your own strength? They said you lost much blood. Sakura nodded. It was a challenging battle, the most difficult I have ever fought. But the midwife and other of the maidens assure that within a few weeks' rest, I will regain my full strength. Ghirahim nodded and turned his sights back to the boy. A few weeks. That meant a few weeks before he could truly attack. He needed to be able to move Sakura to keep her safe whenever he was ready for that step. Perhaps within that time, he could at least locate the spiritual stones. The idea set him at unease. So much time had been wasted already, but he tried to shake it aside. Have you found a name for him yet? Ghirahim asked. Sakura glanced at him curiously. I thought perhaps you... Ghirahim shook his head. I know it's the tradition of your people for women to do the naming. I trust you to grant him a good, solid name befitting one of his birth and station. Sakura smiled. I thank you for trusting me with this task. But then I must tell you also that it is tradition that children are not usually named till their first birthing day comes around, once the parents have had time to know the child and see his personality. It was not so with the princess just born, because that is a different sort of tradition, one of kings and queens, which we soon shall be. Yes, her grin widened, but as king and queen, will we then not make our own rules anyway? Ghirahim smiled back at her. You are ever wise and optimistic, and an encouragement toward me above all others. You will prove the most beloved queen Hyrule has ever known. You will give me many sons, and you may name them whatever you wish. He leaned in, kissed her cheek, and there let his kiss linger. Every fiber of his being wanted to set their son aside, throw her down, and take her. He had to remind himself several times what was at stake to finally make himself draw away, stand up, and declare, "I have much work to be done. Rest well, my queen. I will send your servants back to you. Should you need anything else, call for me. I will visit you later." Sakura smiled sweetly at him. Ghirahim let his gaze linger a moment more before tearing away and stealing from the room. The time would come when he could pour all his passions into his queen once more. For now, it was back to the desert, to pour his energy into the training of his new armies. Okay, so before we begin the next section, you said you had some new theories, maybe?
I do.
What's your new theories?
I don't know if I want to say it out loud.
Okay, then don't say it. You maybe don't want to spoil it for the other people?
Yes.
Okay,
And
all
I'll
right.
be upset with you later, but go ahead and continue.
Okay, I love you.
Love you too.
All right. The next few days passed swiftly, inasmuch as Ghirahim could never seem to get as much done in a day as he wished. And yet, in the same breath, they passed also with painful slowness. He wished he knew some time portal that could whisk him ahead to the future, when the work was done, the worrying long past, and he and his queen sat on the throne of Hyrule, with their little son playing on the royal purple carpet at their feet. The boy continued to grow strong. In fact, he seemed to grow even more quickly than Ghirahim's plans. Ghirahim stole to the desert when he could. Despite the dangers of summoning an army, he had determined that perhaps if he did so, a little at a time, demise would be far less likely to notice. After the witch's betrayal, he could no longer trust that he and his family were safe with them. Amassing smaller armies allowed him to begin their training, while also assuring that, should the time come when the witches proved true enemies, he would have armies at the ready to defend him, his queen, and his heir. The beasts and spirits began to grow restless, cooped up in the spirit temple day after day, but he promised the rewards of their patience would be well satiated. They would feast on the corpses of many Hylian soldiers, and especially on the flesh of the shadow folk, save Impa. Ghirahim had not yet devised what, but he would develop a special kind of punishment for her and her descendants that would last throughout the ages. When Sakura wasn't feeding or playing with her son, Ghirahim would often visit her chambers for counsel. He had sent Sakura far more suitable accommodations for her. He had not so much as spoken a word to Kotake, and in return, Komi seemed to accept this as the best form of forgiveness he could grant, and thus gave him whatever he asked in return. He sat on her bed one day, as he often did, watching as the babe suckled at her breast. It was still difficult for him to visit and not be able to touch her, but he had learned to restrain himself enough so that she was in no danger. He had tried taking some of the Gerudo and Hylian slaves as mistresses in her stead, but found their lack of mental stimulation and conversation left him unfulfilled physically as well, and indeed, even more frustrated than before. Finally, he had settled on suffering in silence till his queen was strong enough to rejoin him in his bed once more. Sakura smiled down at the babe, proudly as ever, before turning her gaze to Ghirahim. "What is it, my lord? I can tell something burdens your mind." Ghirahim glanced up at the handmaids stationed about the room, at the ready for whatever command. "My lady," Sakura said, "I ask that you leave me and my lord here to privacy. He will call you back in when we are through." The ladies curtsied and took their leave. When the door shut on the last of them, Sakura reached with her free hand and touched Ghirahim's face. The electricity of her touch rippled through him, and he shivered. 2 weeks had passed since he had been allowed to truly relieve himself through his passions. Though she grew stronger daily, Sakura was yet cautioned to rest as much as possible, conserving any strength for herself and the babe. Ghirahim could not risk harming one, for fear of harming the other. "What is it then?" Sakura asked, drawing his thoughts back to the matter at hand. "It's everything," Ghirahim muttered. "All our plans. Our army grows strong, but the matter of the spiritual stones remains a mystery. There are rumors of a red, flaming stone in the mountains. It may or may not be a lead. I have dispatched my own personal spies, alongside those Komi has granted me. If I do not use her spies, she will grow suspicious. But I do not trust them, and so I must send my own, and hope their paths do not cross." "Are you sure you cannot simply use your armies now to take the throne?" Sakura asked. The babe began to fuss, but she shifted him, and he quieted again, continuing to feed. Ghirahim shook his head. "It's too risky. Even summoning them a little at a time as I am doing now is a gamble. The moment my master notices that someone is opening a path between our worlds, he would suspect me at once. He would wonder why. He may think at first it was to help him. Indeed, he may already know, perhaps his assuming that I am doing everything for his gain is the only thing sparing us. But the moment he figured out a way to gaze into this time and place and see that I disobey him, that I take everything for myself." "You could simply lie," Sakura said. "You could claim you had taken it all for him, Then seek the stones out when you are ready and use them to overthrow him. Ghirahim stared at her. Truly, if I could love you, I would. Your boldness surpasses that of any other mortal I've ever met, even those with magical blood. Your plan is one I would consider, except that I cannot bear the idea of ever being trapped as a slave ever again. When he is done with me, he will seal me inside his sword again. How then will I be able to find the stones? I need the Triforce's power so that I can be stronger than him before he ever figures things out. And to get the Triforce, I need the stones. At this point, every step is a race against time. Only that I have no idea how much time. In that, I work blindly. What if? Should demise come to this realm and take over? What if you told him that you wish to seek the stones for him, but then, at the last moment, use them to summon the Triforce for yourself? That would buy you more time, prevent him from sealing you inside his sword. Such would be the ultimate deceit, and could come with the ultimate punishment. Or the ultimate reward. The greater the risk, the greater the reward. Without risk, there can be no reward. Do not think I wasn't frightened when I first came to your bed, but I was so drawn by your brilliance of mind, your cunning, your magic. And see now where I am. My loyalty and faithfulness to you are not all that landed me here. My courage played a part as well. And now I lay talking to you, nursing your heir. And what a powerful heir he will be. He will do many great things. I can sense it. Sakura's gaze shifted once more with pride and admiration to their son, and Ghirahim watched them both with wonderment. Sakura still did not cease to impress him, both with her sixth sense, and even more so with her unparalleled confidence in him and all things to come to pass. She had not been wrong about anything yet. If she believed everything would work out in the end, then perhaps he should believe it would too. Sakura looked up at him again. What of the witches these days? Is Kotake yet distraught? Does Komei's anger yet wax hot against you? Ghirahim shook his head. I have seen little of Komei and less of Kotake, which is exactly as I would prefer things. Sakura frowned. Strange, don't you think? Peaceful, I would rather say. I have enough to reckon with without having to babysit those two. I would caution against accepting the witches being so complacent, Sakura said. Kotake may not be as strong in power as her sister, but she is dangerous. She is not in control of herself. She is like a beast that someone once tried to tame but has since gone wild. I have seen women kill over their desire to have a child. You and our son are well guarded. Ghirahim took her hand firmly. No harm will come to you. I don't fear for myself so much, or his, as much as yours. I don't doubt your strength of mind or that of your magic. I am confident both outshine theirs. But they are clever. Do not underestimate them. They have long been silent, and it is more often in silence that plans are made, and men, and demons, unmade, rather than in the din of battle. You worry too much about my affairs. You should get some rest, for my sake and that of our son. He leaned forward and kissed her forehead, then the babe who reached up to snatch at a wisp of his hair. If you recall, Sakura said, it is my worrying about your affairs that first drew us together. Ghirahim snickered and rose from the bed. Indeed. All the same, I believe now should be a time of rest for you. I'll check in on the two of you later. Sakura granted him a final nod and smile, and he slipped from the room. Back to the trenches, he muttered. Time to hit the desert. Summoning a little more of his army and training them remained his solitary option for useful distraction while he awaited news from his spies. Outside, Ghirahim watched the guards' patterns, shamefully predictable as ever, and zipped easily past. Then he flew over the gate and across the desert toward the temple. There was no longer a need to keep up the guise. He could fly through the sand without any worry about the witch's pathetic charms. He busted right through the mighty whirlwinds with as much ease as a bird gliding across a sunny sky. After all, in another time, in another place, whirlwinds had been his specialty. Alighting on the stone slab etched with the Triforce, he set immediately to dancing around its perimeter, chanting the words inscribed in the runes. Dancing was an unnecessary part of the ritual, but it gave the ceremony an extra flair, and allowed him to divert his excited energy as he watched the blue glow encircle the platform. The portal grew until rays of blue light danced like high flames all around. Then, a gap opened in the space between, and monsters poured out. Demons like himself, much lesser in power and prestige, but still his kin whom he welcomed with open arms. Goblins and moblins, dinos whose sword skills were even more deadly than their fire breath, great spiders and snakes, ghosts, reanimated skulls and corpses. Ghirahim changed his chant till the portal had closed. The blue light vanished once more. The new additions to his army surrounded him, screeching, hissing, shrieking, their raucous cheering as they awaited their new master's commands and promises for blood. With the whistling of a simple tune, the rest of his army poured from the temple, many creatures mirroring those he had just summoned, along with a giant carrying a great club and several sprites made of fire or ice. Ghirahim chanted on, till the crimson glow shining in the eyes of his current army reflected also in that of he had just summoned. The red glow of their eyes was a symbol of their loyalty to him, that he had mastered their minds and programmed them to serve him, and him alone. My great army! Ghirahim threw his arms wide, and their din quickly hushed. The time draws near. Soon you shall all taste blood. Soon the inhabitants of this land will be yours to feast upon as you deliver my kingdom to me. Only wait a little longer, and the reward will be well worth it. You shall feast on the flesh and blood of Hylians in the greatest war Hyrule has ever seen. You shall feast and fight and watch as I become the greatest king Hyrule has ever known. Cheers erupted again from his army, a cacophony of snarls, hisses, screeches, yells, screams. Its deafening roar created a sweet symphony in his ears. He listened proudly till the noise quieted again, and then he said, In the meanwhile, we must make our plans. Come, my loyal minions. There is much work to be done. The night stretched late as Ghirahim crept back into the fortress. While he needed no permission from the witches to carry out his plans, the less they knew of what he was up to, the better, lest they seek to put a stop to it. He had found a secret cave and had moved his armies there. It seemed a better bet than the temple. After all, it was only a matter of time before the sisters visited the temple on their own magic business. Inside his chambers at last, Ghirahim fell back on his bed, exhausted and yet alive with energy in one breath. Training an army of such wild things, getting them to understand plans and even the simplest need for hiding proved a mentally exhausting task. Yet the lack of human warmth in his bed beside him reminded him of the energy that had been building inside him like a raging storm for the past couple of weeks. He tried to turn his thoughts to what Sakura had said, her ideas about going on with the war without worrying about the spiritual stones. A reckless yet bold idea. Perhaps she was right. Perhaps, if need be, he could still deceive his way to the crown. And yet, if his master were to become king in that time, what of securing his newborn son? Demise would do whatever he deemed necessary to keep his hold over the crown secure. What he perceived as the slightest threat would be instantly destroyed. Ghirahim could not let that happen to his heir, nor to Sakura. Sakura. His mind wandered to her soft skin, flowing beneath his fingertips like starlight. Her sweet breasts, her thighs, her long golden hair, the perfection of her kiss and touch. Somehow, she always knew exactly how to please him at any given moment, perhaps more of her strange intuition. The steadiness of her gaze, the fearlessness with him, her unbridled passion and dedication, the feel of him inside her. A subtle knock rapped on the door, and then it creaked open. Ghirahim sat up. Perhaps this was her. Perhaps she had somehow sensed his thoughts and came to rescue him from his great need. As the door shut behind the person who had entered, he glimpsed the silhouette of a woman in the torch glow softly illuminating his room. He sat a little straighter and almost called her name, but then the woman turned toward him and he recoiled, nearly throwing a curse at the sight of the Gerudo face. He stopped himself only as he realized it was not Kotake after all. At a glance, she bore similar features, but as he looked closer, this woman was nothing like Kotake or her sister. She was taller, built far stronger, her feminine curves much more defined beneath her garb, sheer silks patterned with stars and crescent moons. Her hair was swept back in elegant waves of fire red streaked with silver and blue. Her golden eyes watched him intensely, drawing his desires to the surface. This woman was not passion and sensuality like his Sakura. She was raw, unbridled, carnal lust, exactly what he needed to satiate his overwhelming need. Where did you come from? Ghirahim demanded. No matter how great his need, he would not be made weak from it like so many mortals. I have never seen you in the fortress before. My name is Amira. I'm one of the ladies from the Gerudo's pleasure house. Pleasure house? I have heard of no such place in my stay here. Lady Kome likes to keep it a secret to most. Lady Kome. Perhaps this explained why she had shown no interest in him. If she chose to surround herself with women like this night and day, perhaps her desires were not those considered natural to her kind. For a great leader such as herself, perhaps such things were best kept secret. Perhaps even Kotake didn't know. Sakura sent us as a gift, my lord, Amira continued. She wanted to be certain you were properly entertained in her absence, knowing that you were a demon of great passion, who needs some means of releasing those passions daily. Sakura. Ghirahim tried to imagine if her hand in this made their tale more or less believable. Sakura had never shown herself to be a jealous woman, nor had she ceased to yet surprise him by knowing exactly what he needed at any given moment. He tried to reason that it could still be a trick, but his mind was soon consumed with her voluptuous breasts and lips. Her sun-kissed skin was flawless, save for traces of a faded scar stretched across one cheek. Only the keenest of eyes would have been able to detect such a subtle detail. "Where did you get such fine silks and jewels?" he asked. "I have hardly seen such finery even on the sisters who are in charge of this place." "The Sisters of Fire and Ice graciously granted them for my use." "Indeed, I am sure they did." Perhaps Sakura wasn't in on this after all. Or, even if it had been her idea, perhaps this was the result of the sisters' 2-week silence. Kotake probably was desperate to re-establish some sort of connection with him. She was likely convinced Komi to be in on the idea as well. It wasn't as though they couldn't both stand to fight back into his good graces. Ghirahim waved the woman over. She seemed to glide across the room with a certain grace. Not the refined sword that Sakura possessed, but rather a grace born from much experience in seducing men. Ghirahim recognized the type. He had had his share. Whoever had chosen this lover for him, they had chosen well. While she might not possess the novelty of Sakura, she was certain to take him for a wild ride all throughout the night. Amira eased onto the edge of the bed, crawling toward him and swaying like a serpent charming its prey. Ghirahim grabbed her, threw her down, and went in for the kill. And that is the end of Chapter 10 of Demon Queen. Thoughts, comments, questions?
I have no questions.
Okay.
I got a new theory, but I'm not going to say it right now.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
I don't know who this Amira girl is.
Who do you think this Amira girl is? Do you have any thoughts on her?
I don't know. You know, I always thought...
You think Sakura sent her? Do you think the sister sent her for some reason?
At first I thought... I really don't think Sakura would do it.
Yeah?
I don't think it's her.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there's the sisters. What's their angle here?
I don't know, distraction maybe? Maybe they're up to something behind the scenes?
Yeah. We haven't heard from them in a while.
We haven't heard from them.
They're probably up to something.
Yeah.
So, okay. So, the question of who this newcomer is, fairly close to the end of the book, if I may say, of this Amira lady. We have, Sakura, her son's growing strong.
Mm-hmm.
We have had several mentions throughout the book about Sakura possessing a strong spirit.
Yep.
I want to point that out. But I won't say anything else since you're not saying anything else. We do know that the kid is blonde hair, blue eyes like Sakura, so I don't think it probably could be Ganon. And again, Ganon we know is at least part, if not all, Gerudo, and so that really kind of throws that theory out anyway, because Sakura's a Hylian, and Ghirahim is Ghirahim, so there's that.
Yeah, remember that I realized she was Hylian last.
Like 75% throughout the book.
I thought she was Gerudo the entire time.
So I had to have made some mention to at the
You
beginning of her being
probably
like
did.
blonde or
just
something that
missed
to like
it
throw
or
you off.
something.
Yeah, but anyway,
Yeah.
to not throw you off. But
I don't think I would have had that theory if I would have remembered that.
yeah. But at any rate, well, you might have still. It could have still happened. Who knows? But yes, we got that going on. We have Ghirahim gradually summoning some armies, hoping that Demise won't notice. Like I said, we're very close to the end of the book, so either something really good has to happen for Ghirahim, or something really bad has to happen. I think one of those two things. I don't think there's any in between at this point, probably, for this book.
It's gonna be bad. It's gonna be bad.
That's what he thinks. It's gonna be bad. But yeah. Anything else before we close out?
It could actually be good from my perspective.
True. Bad for the characters, good for you.
Yep.
Anything else, love?
No.
All right. Well.
Can we make it next week so we can read the next chapter?
No. On that note, happy reading, happy watching, happy listening, and we will see you next week for Chapter 11 of Demon Queen.
Goodbye.